Good afternoon, folks. Thank y'all for being here for the Texas General Land Office's public mitigation hearing on our mitigation funding. It is noon, so we should get started real quick. Folks can find their seats. Thank y'all for being here. Creaky. Alrighty. So again, good afternoon. Thank you for being here for the Texas General Land Office's public hearing for the Community Development Block Grants for Mitigation Funds on Wednesday, October 2nd, 2019. Please make sure that you are signed in the sign-in sheet located outside in the hallway. At this time, I'd like to ask, before we begin today's meeting, that you place all cell phones and other communication devices on silent or off mode. I am doing so myself as well. This public hearing is intended to seek input on the development of the state of Texas's action plan for $4 billion in community development block grants for mitigation funds. The allocation is made to the state of Texas for mitigation projects, programs, and plans. In the areas affected by Hurricane Harvey, as well as 2015 and 2016, those will be our eligible counties, and we will get into a map and a list to make sure that folks are fully aware of what the eligible jurisdictions are. Starting right after my call to order, the Deputy Director for our division of the DGLO that handles disaster recovery, the Community Development and Revitalization Division, Heather LeGrone, will give a presentation on the mitigation funding. When she concludes, we will transition to our public input from our attendees. If you wish to provide public input today for today's public hearing, please complete a comment card at the registration table, located again outside in the hallway. It looks like this. If you would like to come up and provide input today at this microphone for us to archive for our development of the action plan, please make sure to complete one of these so that I can call for you to come forth. And in case you don't have any thoughts right now, but do come up with thoughts later on in the meeting, you are welcome to complete one at that time and just try to get it to one of our staff members here, also located back in the registration table. They'll make sure to run it up here. If there are any questions or comments about the GLO's current disaster recovery programs that are operating, please make sure that you email us at cdr@recovery.texas spelled out .gov, or you can give us a call at 1-844-893-8937. In addition, you are welcome to visit with us after the meeting. We will stick around in case there's any questions or comments that you feel you need to bring to us. So, for the public input, going back to that, each individual speaker who is representing him or herself will have up to 3 minutes. Any individuals representing a delegation, such as our elected officials, will have up to 5 minutes. At the conclusion of your time, you'll notice that I will be timing you with my watch. I'll make sure to let you know, thank you for your public comment, and we will resume with our next public speaker. If this public hearing runs out of public input to have, we will conclude the meeting before our 3 p.m. Designated close time. For all of our folks who want to provide public input, please be aware that this hearing is being recorded, that any public comments and any folks choosing to speak will have their comments recorded and archived. So, without any further ado, I want to introduce to you our Deputy Director for our CDR division for the Texas General Land Office to give a presentation on the HUD mitigation funds. Heather, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everybody. Like Jonah said, I'm Heather. I'm responsible for the disaster recovery programs at the Land Office. Today we're here to talk to you about the mitigation money that has just been released in rules by HUD. Today, as Jonah said, is about you, not necessarily about us. We're here for you to tell us what we should do with these dollars. We're looking for your input within the federal requirements on these dollars to tell us how to use these dollars. So it is intended to be a public hearing, not a public answering. So we are taking your comments. We are not going to respond to you directly as a result of your comments today, but every comment that you give will be logged in the ultimate action plan that's generated as a part of this process and have a written comment. We have not drafted this action plan yet. We are listening to you so that we can decide the best way to utilize this money, because $4 billion sounds like a lot of money until you start dividing it by 140 eligible counties, not to mention all the cities and other entities that reside within those. So I'd like to go ahead and just run you through real quickly what this mitigation register tells us. The Federal Register itself came out in August of this year. Congress appropriated these dollars about a year and a half ago, but it's taken a little while for HUD to put together the rules. HUD has never run a mitigation program before, so it took them a little bit to define from a HUD perspective, housing and urban development, what a CDBG funded mitigation program would look like. This allocation directly to the state of Texas is a $4.2 billion allocation, and there are 140 counties that are eligible for these funds. It's 140 counties, unlike the 49 counties that we have been talking to you about for Hurricane Harvey, because counties that were impacted by flood events in 2015 and 2016 became eligible for these funds. The action plan that we're talking about with you today is due to HUD February the 3rd of next year. HUD is requiring us to do 2 public hearings in advance of our writing of that action plan, and then we will do multiple public hearings after it's drafted, so you can kind of see what we took from you and how we created the programs that are being funded. When HUD allocated this mitigation funding to us, they told us that they were allocating it in the format that you see behind me. $4 billion came to the state of Texas directly for mitigation because of our Hurricane Harvey event. $169 million came to us because of the impact of our 2016 floods, and $52 million came to us for the impact to the state of Texas for the 2015 floods. Houston and San Marcos received direct allocations for their 2015 events. So that's how we come to the 4.2 that I mentioned earlier. In all of those rule writing sessions that HUD put on to get to this Federal Register, they came up with a definition of mitigation. And it is those activities that increase resilience to disasters and reduce or eliminate the long-term risk of loss of life, injury, damage to and loss of property, and suffering and hardship by lessening the impact of future disasters. So when HUD gave the state of Texas this $4.2 billion, this is what their intent was for these monies. As is the case, HUD is telling us about how to use these funds. 50% of the money has to be spent in counties and or zip codes that HUD has specifically designated as most impacted and distressed for 2015, 2016, and Hurricane Harvey. If you look at the map, those are the dark orange areas. 50% of the money must be spent in those dark orange areas. In addition to that, the remaining 50% can be spent in those lighter colored areas. Remember, it's at least in the darker color and up to for the lighter color counties. 50% of this allocation has to be spent within 6 years. This is different than our Harvey allocation that we're currently working with. The white counties are not eligible at all. What would they be dependent upon for funding to fix their same issues? So we're not going to do questions right now, but let me answer your question, because I'm going to do that. The counties that are not shaded are not eligible for these supplemental dollars that were allocated by Congress for events in 2015, 2016, and Harvey. So other opportunities would be the annual allocation that comes through the CDBG non-entitlement program, perhaps at the Texas Department of Agriculture, maybe some loans through Texas Water Development Board, future HMGP allocations that TDM might be operating. So there are other funds, but for now, these dollars are not eligible outside of these counties that are shaded. So 50% of it has to be spent within 6 years. The first $5 billion that we received from Harvey has to be spent in its entirety within 6 years. So the balance within 12 years. That's in recognition of the larger scale projects that HUD is expecting us to implement with these dollars. And it also recognizes the fact that we're going to be doing bigger projects that are very likely to require more stringent and bigger environmental assessments and or impact statements. It's likely to require core permitting, and we all know that that takes a minute to get done. So it is in recognition of all of those things. 50% of this money has to be spent on the low to moderate income national objective. So 50% of these dollars have to benefit either households and or individuals that qualify as low to moderate income. Low to moderate income is making 80% or less of the median family income for the county that you reside within. So if you're defining a service area, the majority of the people in that service area, 51%, or more, must be low to moderate income to qualify for that 50% of the funds. And then there's a list of the counties and zip codes that are in orange, because I know that's teeny tiny to see. And this is also available on our website, and we do have some copies in the back as well. And these are the other eligible counties that are in HUD's determination lesser impacted counties. So unlike the disaster recovery action plan that we've previously done that relied on a needs-based allocation, we looked at your damage to decide how much money you were going to be eligible for. When we decided how much money through a competition that you were applying for, we did that based on need. This one is based on risk. So HUD has us looking at the state hazard mitigation plan. They have us looking at your hazard mitigation plans, any type of action that you have locally taken to identify risk in your community. We are looking for that risk to be related to either a hurricane type event or a flood event from these dollars. In a previous public hearing, we had a question come up related to wildfires. While yes, that is a risk here in the state of Texas, a wildfire is not a hurricane type event or a flood type event unless you can tell me otherwise. We're not going to be able to fund something that would be mitigation for a fire. So we're working on developing that use of funds now. You'll likely see us doing things to define the programs, to establish those criteria, and to figure out how much money of that $4 billion is going into each of those programs. And that develops what we call a method of distribution. And all of that goes into the action plan. HUD has added some additional requirements on these dollars that we haven't seen in the past from CDBG. They talk often and frequently in the register rules about promotion of this regional or this local planning or implementation of building codes and zoning activities. They want to see coordination between us, so they're looking for regional responses. So maybe you're not looking at it from a community perspective, maybe you're looking at it as a whole county, or maybe you're not looking at it from a county perspective but a whole COG, or a river basin, or a watershed. So you'll see throughout the document of rules all of those requirements. But you will also see, as we design the programs, us responding to those requirements that have been placed on it. Again, all with an eye towards reducing risk overall. So all of the programs that we do, we're looking for that. One thing that HUD has put into the regulations this time that seems counterintuitive that they had never done before is an assurance of construction costs being reasonable. So it's not a true benefit cost analysis like what you would apply for HMGP with FEMA with, but it is a consideration for cost as compared to beneficiaries. So this is, unfortunately, a lengthy process to get us here. Now that HUD released the regulations, and they have told us that we have until February 3rd to submit this action plan to them, we are backing into what that looks like. So first, even before the action plan came out, we started doing outreach. A bunch of you responded to a survey that we put out. We have been taking advantage of other meetings when we have met with you to talk to you about what mitigation means to you. And then the Federal Register came out, like I told you, in August. Now we are doing a lot of this upfront, tell us what the problems are, how we should use these monies, type development of the document. The last action plan that we wrote was about 350 pages. I don't expect this one's going to be any less. So at the end of the development of that action plan, we're going to come back and give you a summary type public hearing so that you can hear us tell you what we think are the high points and give you an opportunity to comment on what we've decided the best use of these funds would be. To get us there, we've got to go to translation. Based on the population served in those 140 counties, there are 5 languages that we need to translate the document into. That translation we expect is going to take between 35 and 40 days, and then we'll move into a 45-day public comment period. During that 45-day public comment period is when we'll be doing those public hearings that I mentioned. After the comment period closes, we actually will respond to every single comment that we receive. So everything that you tell us today, if you send us a letter, if you respond in the next public hearings, in the back of this document and one of the appendices will be your comment and our response to that comment. From there, we go into HUD approval. We submit the action plan to HUD on February the 3rd. And HUD has said they want 60 days to approve that action plan. So for those of you who are counting, that's about April Fools, that HUD will approve this action plan if they're on time. And it is at that point that we will be able to move forward with actually taking applications and obligating these funds. So yes, it is definitely, I say this all the time, more of a marathon than a race. And I always do this, I always get off script. I told you all this already. So project eligibility, there is not a tieback requirement. If you'll remember that first $5 billion that we got for Hurricane Harvey, you have to tell us exactly what about Harvey made this a project for us to fund. The same thing happened in 2015 and 2016. You had to have been flooded by 2015 to be eligible for a 2015 allocation. This money is not coming to us in the same fashion. This money is coming to us with a risk base or a forward look. So as long as that forward look is solving a risk, and ideally an identified risk, related to things that can happen during a hurricane or related to flooding, it is possibly going to be eligible from these funds. So we're looking at that, again, that mitigation definition. We're looking at current and future risk, and it has to be eligible for CDBG, both as an eligible activity and as a national objective, 50% of which has to be spent on low to moderate income. And I'm gonna have to harp on this because HUD does. We're looking for regional investments that reduce risk. So things like upgrading your water, your sewer, your solid waste, communications, transportation, energy, health, any of your medical facilities, or just public infrastructure as a whole could be eligible projects based on identified risks. There's a possibility to do multi-use funding or multi-use facilities. So if you have a building that serves multiple purposes, you could potentially utilize CDBG to do that building or a portion of that building. We cannot fund things that are general conduct of government, like City Hall or courthouses or emergency operations centers, but we can do police and fire and community centers. So if those things are married together in a single facility, there's a possibility that you can fund at least a portion of that facility from the CDBG mitigation funds. And throughout the document, if you're reading the regulations, there is an emphasis on green and natural mitigation where possible. One thing that came out of this that we did not expect is HUD had originally told us we were not going to be able to do housing with these dollars at all. They backpedaled a bit on that, and they are going to allow us to do housing. The one caveat that they put on that housing is that it must be a mitigation effort. All of the houses that we build that stronger than they were, for sure. We elevate where it's appropriate. If they are in a windstorm county, we build them to windstorm standards. So we're very comfortable with our housing qualifying as mitigation. Our homeowner assistance program under the Harvey effort serves 48 counties, and we are oversubscribed in that program right now by about $500 million. That oversubscription has caused us to already start telling applicants that they're applying to a program that is fully exhausted and that they're being placed on a wait list. By plussing up that program from the mitigation dollars, we'll be able to help more households rebuild their homes. So we're excited about that possibility that we didn't think was going to be possible. Other housing activities that could be considered and things that you may consider as you're thinking about what you're going to apply for as a community is more buyout funds. Buyout funds have been kind of, I don't know, not terribly popular and really, really loved, depending on the community that was applying for them. We do recognize that buyouts are a tough program to implement. That ongoing maintenance, removing them from the tax rolls, all of those things, nobody wants to use eminent domain, definitely creates some problems for communities to do buyout programs. That will be an eligible activity under this, but for those communities that are specifically interested in that. I don't think you will see us set aside money like we had to do with the first $5 billion specifically for buyouts this time. Any type of flood proofing is going to be eligible. Anything related to hardening is also going to be eligible. So from an economic development perspective, HUD has said generally economic development is not going to be an eligible activity from the mitigation funds. From our disaster recovery funds, we set aside $100 million, and we are actually making loans or grants to businesses in exchange for job creation or retention who were affected by Hurricane Harvey. The only thing that we can do directly related to businesses in true economic development fashion is something that would harden that business for next time. So it's not really directly related to the health of the business itself. It's more about hardening the area or hardening the business that it's within. Obviously, when you spend $4 billion in 140 counties, there is an economic impact, but HUD does not look at that as a direct economic development program. As is always the case, we can use some portion of our money, and we're capped at 15%, for planning and public services. So you'll see us standing up programs that consider zoning, that consider building codes and land use plans. All of those things we think, HUD thinks, prepares communities for next time. Because until you have a plan to move forward as a holistic approach, you may not know the projects that need to be done and how to prioritize those. We'll see money's going into these hazard mitigation plans that you're required to do for HMGP as needed. We're going to look for opportunities to utilize your current hazard mitigation plans to be able to build out the projects that you identified in those plans. And then we're looking for opportunities for public assistance. One thing that came up in our public hearing yesterday in Beaumont that I thought was really interesting, under public assistance, the suggestion was financial education related to helping people plan for, budget for, being able to cover flood insurance. So showing people how to budget their limited incomes and come up with that flood insurance so next time they won't be affected as badly. Or going through that financial planning with them so that the next time FEMA hands them a check for $30,000, they're more positioned and more likely to be able to understand how to budget that $30,000 to their benefit. So education, outreach campaigns are going to be eligible. You'll probably see us do things like PSAs related to encouraging people to buy flood insurance, reminding people turn around, don't drown kind of thing. So that might be something that you could do with these funds. Ineligible activities. Funding for buildings used for the general conduct of government. This one is one that HUD has had in place since the beginning of the implementation of the CDBG program. What they mean by this and how they have defined general conduct of government is city halls, courthouses, and emergency operations centers. So emergency response services, like that emergency operations center, is not eligible. Points of distribution. So when TDM came out and they had pods in place and the big 18-wheelers tore up your parking lots when they were delivering all of those supplies, the repair of those is not an eligible CDBG expense. Another thing that HUD has placed in the program and has had for quite some time is forced mortgage payoff. It hasn't been an issue in Texas, but in some other states, we saw lenders, as homeowners were receiving funds from CDBG, saying, no, in fact, you're not going to repair that house, you're going to pay off your mortgage instead. So CDBG has a particular limitation on forced mortgage payoffs, and that mortgage company is not capable of doing that. The enlargement of dams or levees beyond the original footprint is not an eligible use. This one is not terribly intuitive from a mitigation perspective. We are looking for candidates to use as particular instances to be able to go to HUD and ask for a waiver on this one. If we're doing mitigation activities, one would think that you would want to either create and or expand upon dams and levees in certain aspects of the program. And we cannot help private utilities. HUD came up with a new idea with these mitigation funds, and they're calling them covered projects. A covered project is a project that in total cost is $100 million or more, of which at least $50 million is coming from CDBG. The only thing different about this project as compared to any other project from my perspective is that this project is actually going into the action plan in its entirety. So all of the detail associated with this project, how much is it going to cost, where's the money coming from, the benefit of that project, all goes directly into the action plan, which is put out for public comment, which the whole state has an opportunity to participate in consideration for. What this means is it's likely to take a little bit longer to get a project like this approved. And when we first started doing these hearings, we were saying we haven't heard of any projects this size, but we've been corrected since then. So with that, again, we're here mainly to listen to you. We definitely want to know from you what you think we need to do with these funds. Those of you who've heard me talk before know that we are getting about 10% of the money that we needed for our Hurricane Harvey recovery alone. As it relates to our 2015 and 2016 recovery, that number is less than 5% of what we needed. So we need to be smart about the use of these funds, and you who are on the ground, you who know the specifics, are critical in telling us how to utilize these funds. So the point of this next portion of the meeting is to listen to you so that we can decide the best way to use these dollars. And like Jonah said, once we're done listening to all of your comments, we will definitely hang around and talk to you one-on-one if you have particular questions or issues that you want to talk about. If you have any questions related to the $5 billion, if you're looking for details related to the Homeowner Assistance Program and the Homeowner Reimbursement Program application that you've put together, please let us know. Trey's here and he can direct you to the right place to get those answered. But today we'd really like to focus on the mitigation funds and how we can move forward with that action plan. Jonah?
So as indicated earlier, we're moving into our public input portion of this hearing. The intention of this part of the hearing is to get input from our folks who want to let us know how we use our money, just like Heather said. In order to get our public input and have it be appropriately archived and recorded, we do need these comment cards. So throughout the presentation, if you had any thoughts, any questions, or any comments that you wanted to provide to us, now would be a fantastic time to grab one of these, get them filled out, and turned over to one of our staff members so that we can have them in hand and be able to call names out specifically. So we're going to go in the order of which they were received. Whenever I call a name out, please come forward to this microphone up here in the front. Adjust the microphone according to what best fits you so that we can hear your voice clearly. And we'll move through our public comment cards. As indicated earlier, if we go through all of our public comment cards and there is no further public comment to be provided, we will conclude this meeting even if it ends sooner than 3 p.m. So to start with, our first public input today will be Nueces County Judge Barbara Canales. Judge, whenever you're ready. On deck, we have the Mayor of Rockport, Pat Rios. Yeah, 5 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. Wow. And good morning. I wanted to come here today to offer public comment on behalf of Nueces County. We are very encouraged in Nueces County about the amount of money that has been appropriated under this plan, but we also have deep concerns about some of the rulemaking as we believe that it is really very illustrative here in Nueces County how these rules really work to our disadvantage and to many of my brothers and sisters that are in coastal counties and are here today. Let me start off by saying that the low to moderate income requirement of 50%, for instance, really damages a great community like Port Aransas, who was first hit by Hurricane Harvey. We have very much worked very hard with our grants department to try to establish the 50% rule there. But it's a seaside community. It's both occupied by incredible locals, but it's meant for not only Texas, but for tourists from all over the world. And as a result, it's a second home destination for many. So when you have these types of seaside resorts that get hit, that are integral to your overall county economy, they're not often going to meet your LMI 50% requirement. So we think that that rule in and of itself shows a lack of understanding and comprehension of the very place that I know HUD is trying to help. In addition, I'm very dismayed to hear that emergency response centers will not be considered as part of these eligibility requirements. Quite frankly, the coast has never had the type of dollars to be able to properly form a joint fusion coastal command operation center. Currently, Nueces County operates out of the 5th floor of the courthouse, which has some serious concerns about its ability to withstand a major frontal hit of a Cat 4 or higher hurricane. the very idea of resiliency. I just finished reading in the last 30 minutes since I had the opportunity to look at your requirements. I reread our hazard mitigation plan, and all of it really requires that the first chain of command in order to help the entire county and our regional partners is to have a strong basis for a command center. In addition, I believe that I'm joined here later today by many members of nonprofits who are involved with emergency response, and they too feel that they are deeply underfunded, even if they're, in a 501c3 environment where they can seek private funding. There is a natural alliance when they represent over 26 counties, many of which are in the shaded dark or light areas, that they're providing the health and welfare response. In the case of Halo Flight, who you'll hear from later on, they're in much need of a state-of-the-art helicopter with the right IFR type of radar capabilities. These are the types of projects that truly define the mission statement as HUD outlined. The problem is the mission statement is strong. The rules are not in keeping with the mission statement. We believe the General Land Office needs the help of the 254, that's the 254 Texas counties, because today it happens to be hurricane, wind, and flood, but tomorrow it could be wildfire and drought. Wildfire, not flower. Wildfire, and I'm thinking flowers, but wildfire and drought. And so what's good for one of us is good for all of us. And I'm truly saddened to know that the process is not in keeping with due process that our government so proudly hails as why we're different than any other of the nations on this planet. And that is that we allow the public to come and speak to our government. But with this HUD making this particular federal rules, there was no opportunity for people who are truly experts, truly understand how county government works and how it's funded, to come before HUD and to be able to have a process where they could lend their voice. We thank the General Land Office in Nueces County for giving us our voice here today. We understand that you're not here to answer our questions. We look forward to putting together the best possible regional grants. We intend to work with our sister cities. Our hazard mitigation plan, I do want to put in for the record, does incorporate all cities and all watersheds within Nueces County. I intend to reach out regionally to my friends who are county judges in our COG to see how we can partner. But make no mistake, there are needs that are unique to Nueces County. And even though they desire for us to partner, know that even if that's our will and it's our heart, it may not be in the best interest of our county. And that's what makes it so hard. So we'll concentrate in arenas that we think we can do the most good. But we believe in general, here in Nueces County, that the process is integrally flawed at the federal level. We ask and we demand that our federal representatives get involved and stop the absolutely lack of common sense to not be able to provide for housing in our coastal environments that were hit by Harvey is completely to defy the mission statement of HUD. And so I thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to working with you. I do believe the devil's in the details, and the clarification that you've broadened my horizons today. I don't want to look for workarounds, but we'll do what's in the best interest of our county, and we will look to you for guidance. So for all of my regional partners, I'm going to turn around and say, Nueces County seeks partnerships. Please contact my office. Wherever there is a way to work together, we're going to have to stand strong together in order to compete with the rest of the counties that we know will take the lion's share of these dollars. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, Mayor Rios from the city of Rockport. On deck, we have Mayor Kendrick from the city of Holton. Thank you, Mayor Kendrick.
Since Mayor Rios has stepped out, I guess you get Mayor Kendrick from Fulton, Texas. standing here in front of you, and I appreciate your comments, Judge. We're standing here, the town of Fulton was in the eye of Hurricane Harvey. Our citizens are still rebuilding. They're still out of money. Insurance is not provided what should have been done quickly enough. Enough money wasn't there for everybody to rebuild, including myself. We're at the stage of this game now after 2 years, 2.5 years almost. We're sitting here trying to go through another hurricane season with things not completed. We are still lack of temporary housing. We're lack of affordable housing in our county. We have sat with HUD many times and asked for their assistance and went on deaf ears. Today we're addressing the messenger for HUD. We should not shoot the messenger, but we sure would love to do a whole lot more with HUD to get them here. I've made a statement before, it's kind of like a ventriloquist. You can throw your voice around a room and everybody can speak on your behalf, but no one is hearing the truth come out of your mouth. Sometimes we end up like Jeff Durham has a jalapeno on a stick. Somebody's just mouthing real loud, and we're not hearing anything from us, but they're getting to do all the talking. We're short in our county. We're short in our cities. We're short on money. We're short on time getting recovered. We keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Everybody says 5 to 10 years to recover. That's inappropriate. It should be easier. We can't change rules in Washington, D.C., but the rules in Washington, D.C. are being made without our input. And that's the biggest issue we've got. All the rules that you set in front of us today from HUD do not meet the standards of Fulton, do not meet the standards of Aransas County, or even the city of Rockport, or Port Aransas. My fellow mayor over at Port Aransas, I wish he was here standing beside him, because we have testified many a times from the damages that we've occurred and lack of support in getting that area. If it wasn't for the state of Texas right now, we wouldn't be recovering. It's not from HUD. It's from our governor. It's from our state legislators passing bills to help us get here. Unfortunately, our state government has forgot about who was first hit, and then we were the first forgotten by the federal government. Even though they're sending more money to us, if you don't send money and strap your hands where you can't use the money appropriately, then there's no sense sending us money. And today, you're strapping our hands to the sides and telling us we get to go in a rubber room and bounce around and try to collect all the dollars we can and spend it where we want to without having the use of our hands. Please understand, we're not mad at GLO or George Bush or the state of Texas, but HUD needs to grow up and realize they're inadequate and out of date in their procedures and policies. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have aldermen from the city of Ingleside on the Bay and Nyberg. On deck, we have Susie Wilder, alderman from the city of Ingleside on the Bay. Howdy, ma'am.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Ann Nyberg, and I live at 320 Inglewood on Ingleside on the Bay, not to be confused with Ingleside. My husband and I moved here from the DFW area to get away from congestion, have a slower lifestyle, and most importantly, to be by our 2 granddaughters. We started to build a home a month before Harvey hit. Due to the storm, we had damage to some of the framework that had not been completed, leaving it vulnerable to high winds. After the storm, we were significantly delayed due to waiting for insurance claims, lack of power, and most important, lack of construction labor. All that also caused the price of our construction to increase. However, it was very difficult to complain at the time because we were lucky to have a place to live and an income coming in when so many people in Ingleside on the Bay did not. Finally, we were able to move into our new home. As we adjusted, I felt a passion for IOB and wanted to keep it the jewel of a city it is, despite being surrounded by heavy industry. Consequently, I ran for city council and am now currently serving my community as an alderman. Since being elected, I've become aware of some of our people still suffering from Harvey's impact. My neighbor across the street finally got back into her house a couple of months ago and is still working as she tries to get her life back to normal. Another person in our community had struggled with the very complicated process of getting the help he needed and deserved due to a fixed income, limited reading level, and education. Just last week, we came together as a neighborhood and fixed an opening in the peak of his attic This opening caused animals to live up there, ruining his vents under his eaves. We also have an abandoned boat on a lot in our city that had washed up during Hurricane Harvey. Now it precariously sits with the possibility of becoming a dangerous projectile in another storm. We have tried many things, but have yet not been able to remove it due to our limited resources. We are a very small community with limited resources, including little commercial business for a tax base. We are a proud community, willing to come together and help each other out. Many of our city operations rely on volunteers, including repairing potholes. We have yet to get our street signs up since the storm, making it difficult for our new residents and service people to find locations. I am currently very concerned that our community can continue to mitigate damage from Harvey and improve our city to be more resilient for the next storm. We as a city need help with making sure our building codes on new construction, renovations, and remodels are resilient enough to limit life lost, damage to people, and destruction of the next storm. My hopes and dreams of IOB are to continue to unite and grow strong, working together with our surrounding industry to create a safe, inviting place for all our residents, both young and old, whether they are retired or working blue-collar jobs or professional. I hope you will think long and hard to include Ingleside on the Bay, a little piece of paradise, in the new state mitigation plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Alderman from the City of Ingleside Bay, Susie Wilder. On deck, we have Randy Kane, City Councilman from the City of Ingleside on the Bay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Susie Wilder. I serve on the City Council for Ingleside on the Bay. I live at 1215 Bay Shore in Ingleside on the Bay. I'm on the east end of the Bay Shore, where we experienced losing 90% of our pier, and all of our huge boulders shifted and took away our protection from high tides and high winds that force water under our pier that is attached to land and under our concrete pad that is now suspended with little sand or soil under it, thanks to Hurricane Harvey. Quite a few of my neighbors haven't been able to build back their piers after Harvey like we did, due to the fact that they are uninsurable and very costly. Believe me, I felt it in my pocketbook. We actually built our pier in the same footprint it was prior to Harvey, although we feel that was a huge mistake. We should have raised it a foot or more. Our waters seem to be rising higher and higher each year, causing erosion and damage to our shoreline. Just a few doors further east is a small marina at the Brass Turtle Lodge. And between our high tides, winds, and ship traffic, our city streets washes away at a quick rate of speed. Some ships go by so fast and we have so much water that is pushed onto our shore and city streets, it comes rushing roughly 100 yards towards our house, putting wear and tear on our streets, and not to mention that boat ramp. My husband and I have owned our house and pier not quite 3 years, and sadly our shoreline seems to be diminishing. We poured concrete to help reinforce our bulkhead to give us a little more protection, although the tides seem to be higher and the winds stronger. I'm not sure what other actions we need to take to protect our shoreline. Please consider helping our small community. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have City Council Member Randy Kane from the City of Ingleside Bay. On deck, we have Larry Gillespie, Alderman, City of Ingleside on the Bay.
Thank you for having this public hearing. Good afternoon. My name is Randy Kane, and I'm also a newly elected alderman in the City of Ingleside on the Bay in San Patricio County. My first visit to the area was in 1978 to go sailing at Ingleside Cove, and my wife and I purchased a home in late 2017 after the storm and after I retired. Although we did not own our home before Hurricane Harvey struck, we did own a canal lot in Ingleside on the Bay with the intent of building there, so we followed the storm and its aftermath very closely. As a resident and city councilman of the City of Ingleside on the Bay, I'm very concerned with the ever-increasing potential for catastrophic loss that we face in our small bayside town. We're located at the intersection of the Corpus Christi and La Quinta ship channels on the shores of Corpus Christi Bay. Because of a combination of subsidence and rising sea levels, During king tides like we have right now, a 1-foot wave will overtop most of our seawalls. Our swollen storm drains are prevented from emptying, and many homes have several inches of water in them right now, even with good weather. 5 of our 6 sanitary sewer lift stations are very near to the same elevation and could be inundated again as they have been in the past. A large portion of our property tax revenue comes from the lots, homes, and businesses that are now under threat of significant damage from a combination of rising sea levels and more frequent dangerous storms, especially during the fall, these late season storms. Deepened and widened ship channels will increase the surge and increasing large ship traffic as well. A storm that strikes during the time of year that the king tides are present could inundate and damage our city at historic levels. Being a small city, we're often overlooked and routinely confused with Ingleside, our nearest neighbor. But even so, we have an active, concerned, and involved population. We're here today to speak out and hopefully make everyone aware of the fact that regardless of the content of our county's mitigation plans, we have indeed suffered losses from Hurricane Harvey and will likely suffer significantly more in the future if steps aren't taken now to prepare. We're doing what we can. We're seeking help from the NSF. We're engaged with 10 UCC and everyone else that will listen. We sincerely hope that Ingleside on the Bay's needs for becoming a resilient Bayside community will be strongly considered in the new state mitigation plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, Larry Gillespie, Alderman, City of Ingleside on the Bay. On deck, Wes Williams, owner of Bahia Marina.
My name is Larry Gillespie. I'm on the City Council of Ingleside on the Bay. I live at 105 Bayshore Court in IOB. IOB is a small community on Corpus Christi Bay, just south of Ingleside. I've lived there in IOB for the last 19 years. We've been through several tropical storms and hurricanes before Harvey. Harvey was the windiest of all of them and had quite a bit of high tide associated with it. Our little community was lucky compared to our neighbors to the east. We lost many trees and outbuildings, lots of shingles from roofs and complete roofs, and several complete homes. Quite a few of our losses are still being repaired and replaced. Our biggest problem is flooding. Where I live is adjacent to Corpus Christi Bay. Since we moved in, the water level of the bay has risen several feet. We have a lot of subsidence in our area since it's next to the bay. Our drainage is open ditches along our streets. After heavy rains, spring tides, and September-October king tides, the ditches flood and run through driveways, flooding garages, and eliminating traffic on some of the streets. My request is that Ingleside on the Bay be considered in mitigating flooding and improving our drainage. I have some pictures to allow you to see the problems that we have. Thank you very much for letting us speak.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, Wes Williams. On deck, Catherine Maston, chairperson of the Ingleside on the Bay Planning and Zoning Commission.
Hi, thanks for letting us come and speak. My name is Wes Williams, and I live at 84 Bayshore Drive in Ingleside on the Bay, Texas. I also work there. I wanted to run a marina, a coastal marina that could be open 12 months a year to provide everybody access to the beautiful Gulf waters, because that's an issue these days, having access, especially in an industrial area like we have. Bahia Marina has been the center of activity in Ingleside on the Bay for well over 60 years. We aren't a municipal marina supported by taxpayers and bond issues, but we're one of a handful of small private marinas that caters to average Joe boaters, providing a clean and modest place with reasonable slip rates and some really nice folks. Unfortunately, Harvey nearly destroyed us. You didn't hear much about it, but Ingleside on the Bay received significant damage, not from floodwaters, but from Category 4 hurricane wind speeds, prying roofs and siding off of buildings, driving horizontal wind-driven rain through broken windows, and dropping power line poles. 5 boats in our marina sunk in their slips. We had a 7-boat pileup in our harbor. Many of the boats broke loose and rammed other boats. 4 sailboats were demasted. In all, about 2/3 of the boats that remained in the marina were damaged, and 90% of the slips were damaged or destroyed. Thankfully, the GLO was there to help us remove the sunken boats, which was really nice because that's expensive. Every building in the marina received damage, some more than others. Our 5-unit apartment building instantly became uninhabitable. All the tenants had to leave, including me, who lived in one of the apartments. We were out of business for 8 months, basically. All 4 power line poles that served the marina blew over, causing additional damage, including knocking electrical infrastructure into saltwater canals. We were without electricity in Ingleside on the Bay for about a week. Water took even longer to get back. The damages to my facility were about $250,000, and loss of income was probably about another $150,000. We've done a lot of work in our community in the past 2 years since Harvey, but there's still a lot to do. Thankfully, we have loyal customers at the marina, and our apartment building is full, and we have all but 6 of our slips re-rented. My hope is that Ingleside on the Bay will never have to go through another devastating hurricane without having some resources to help us better prepare and help us mitigate the risks inherent to living on the coast. There's a lot we can do to keep our areas safe, and we need to protect what we have. We've demonstrated resilience, but we are and will continue to be at risk for future disasters. And as the channels get deeper and wider in support of industrial development, our potential for flooding, especially during a king tide, can be devastating. Ingleside on the Bay is an independent city, very unique into itself, and we want to be considered for resources for mitigating the damaging effects of future storms and hurricanes. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, Catherine Maston. On deck, Patrick Nye, representing himself.
Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Dr. Catherine Maston, and I moved to Ingleside on the Bay just after Hurricane Harvey, and now serve as chair of the Ingleside on the Bay Planning and Zoning Commission. Located on a peninsula bordered by La Quinta and Corpus Christi ship channels, IOB was founded 60 years ago, and it was incorporated as a city in 1991. According to the latest census estimate, we grew from 615 residents in 2010 to 777 in 2017, representing a 26% increase. With a median age of 48, per capita income of $38,000, and median home value of $182,000, IOB is a working class community that provides affordable housing in an area of tremendous industrial growth. A quarter of our households have children. Our little piece of paradise, with its own beach club, marina, canal, gorgeous sunsets, and a strong sense of community, is truly a great place to live, work, and raise a family. However, there's trouble in paradise. Our city has suddenly found itself surrounded by oil and gas pipelines and industries. The channels are being deepened to accommodate ever larger and more frequent ships to carry liquid natural gas and oil from the Permian Basin. But the biggest existential threat to IOB comes from the very waters that we so love. Of about 400 lots in the city, nearly half are located directly on the water or in the FEMA floodplain. The majority of our 361 homes were built in the 1960s and 70s, and many already experience frequent flooding. IOB was hit hard by Hurricane Harvey, as you've already heard. Several homes were completely destroyed, and nearly every home was affected in some way. The community was without power for a significant amount of time, and lift stations couldn't operate. A few weeks ago, lightning struck a home, causing significant damage, and a nearby oil storage tank also caught fire. But these threats are not reflected in the San Patricio County Hazard Mitigation Plan. This could be because the community was still recovering when input was being gathered. And as you've heard from other folks, we're still recovering. But we are taking steps for a more resilient future. The Planning and Zoning Commission has partnered with Texas A&M in Corpus Christi to update our comprehensive plan. The newly formed IOB Coastal Watch Association has partnered with 2 TAM-UCC research institutes to monitor, mitigate, and react to the threats we face. And the City Council plans to conduct the city's first ever formal drainage study. However, without funding to execute our plans, we fear that IOB may ultimately be reclaimed by the sea. We're excited about this new infusion of funding to our state. We hope that as you draft the statewide plan, you will think about how these funds can be used to protect the small coastal communities of Texas that are already here, like Ingleside on the Bay. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, Patrick Nye. On deck, we have John Kaminsky.
Thank you all very much. Could you get the definition back up for the head for me? Is that possible? Thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to say that Ingleside on the Bay is perfect for this statement right here. And I want to tell you some reasons why. My name is Patrick Nye. I've been a property owner in Ingleside on the Bay for 52 years, been there a while. I'm a geologist. I've seen the tide fluctuations. We're 1.7 feet higher than we first moved there. We're constantly seeing an onslaught of the sea level fluctuations. I'm also a member of the Ingleside on the Bay Coastal Watch Association that Catherine alluded to. We're trying right now to facilitate interactions with the universities to help study these impacts and what we can do and keep our air and water quality and life quality good. I want to also say that Ingleside on the Bay, as others have pointed out also, is adjacent to La Quinta Channel, and we're seeing a lot of ship traffic. They're looking at widening and deepening that channel. It's also at the confluent of the Corpus Christi ship channel that's been there for many years. These large tankers that are going in and out are causing some waves that are causing coastal erosion. We're having flooding today. This isn't flooding that's happening yesterday. This king tide now is covering streets, it's covering property. We are impacted right now. We were very pleased that the Corps of Engineers went out and put a breakwater in 2012 that eliminated some of the ship activity and wave activity that was destructing our shorelines. But I wanted to say that it is not taking care of issues now. So what we're seeing is we're currently undergoing damage, and we're seeing our property and our property values being lessened, as you point out right there. Over the years, I've seen several hurricanes. I think Celia was pretty bad. We've owned our property 1 month when Beulah hit, and that was a very high tide that went probably 6 feet up in our properties. The tides and the storms is going to prohibit, as people pointed out, emergency vehicles from being able to access some of the people that may be impacted by emergency vehicles or fire or otherwise. We think that this is very critical. The damage that Harvey did has been pointed out. I think the 4-foot tide would have covered most of the low-lying areas of Ingleside on the Bay. And what we're trying to do is figure out a methodology, a way that we can lessen the impact of our future disaster. This community is resilient, as we all pointed out, but the prospect for an imminent disaster, or for a disaster, is imminent. We are too low-lying. We have the ship traffic coming in and the tonnage and so forth. Lastly, we envision our city as becoming a flagship model for future coastal communities. This Ingleside on the Bay Coastal Watch, as Catherine pointed out, we're looking at our air quality, our water quality. We're doing studies on erosional effects. We're doing studies on what the sea level effects are going to be. And then if you couple that with the tanker and the tonnage and all the things that are occurring now rapidly within our communities, that's going to impact us even greater. The last study that was done on the deepening of the La Quinta ship channel says that in 7.5 years, we're going to have a 3.9 high tide at the king tide, which is right now at this time of the year. That would flood approximately 100 homes and homes and buildings along our community. So the impact of that And what we need to do, what we are requesting from you, is to find a long-term solution to this so that we can stabilize our community and be involved in the things that we need to be in our area. So I just want to point out that we are the perfect candidate for this, and I want to thank both of y'all for being here and providing us this time. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have John Kaminsky, Assistant City Manager for the City of Victoria. On deck, we have Judy Telge with the Coastal Bend, I apologize. I believe it's Council of Government.
Thank you. Good afternoon. John Kaminsky, City of Victoria. About 32 years of service as a planning director, and now Assistant City Manager there in Victoria. I'm well aware of HUD's national objectives with their CDBG program. I've administered an entitlement CDBG program for 25 years or so, many years of which I'd like to forget. But I'm also aware of reality and common sense. I believe that the City of Victoria's primary challenge with this program is going to be the LMI requirement, and our request would be any level of flexibility that can be provided toward that LMI requirement. When we talk about mitigation projects, our biggest mitigation project needs are going to be drainage projects, flood protection, water and sewer, potentially public safety facilities. When you're trying to solve a drainage problem, drainage basins don't respect block group boundaries. They don't care about census block group boundaries. They go where they go. In our community, many of our very low LMI eligible communities, neighborhoods, are deep in the floodplain. They're closer to the Guadalupe River. In order to fix their drainage problems, we cannot avoid benefiting people that are not LMI upstream in that same drainage basin. It's not possible. It's just not physically possible. Same applies to water and sewer plants, lift stations. They don't follow block group boundaries. They don't care where those are. The same would apply to a public safety facility, whether it's a fire station or a police substation. The guidelines mention land use codes. Land use codes apply across an entire community. There's no way that you can apply an LMI standard to a rewritten land use code or adoption of a new building code. So that is our primary concern in the City of Victoria. We appreciate the GLO and everything you're doing to assist our communities. You guys have been great to work with on the initial allocations that we're currently working on, and we're looking forward to that relationship continuing. So thank you again for your attention.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, Judy Telge. On deck, Tom Klassen with Halo Flight.
Good afternoon. My name is Judy Telge, and Coastal Bend Council of Governments is a subset of some of the things I'm going to talk about. I'm with Coastal Bend Center for Independent Living, working with people with disabilities, and with Accessible Housing Resources Incorporated, as well as the Affordable Housing Subcommittee through COG with the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies Committee. So 3 things, 3 hats, all the same comments that I'm going to be making. But with the Coastal Bend Center for Independent Living and Accessible Housing Resources, the 2 organizations are the only 2 administrators in this region, Region 10 of TDHCA, that are providing tenant-based rental assistance vouchers, specifically for people impacted by Hurricane Harvey. They're called, excuse me, disaster vouchers. We have just barely skimmed the top of meeting the needs of the folks that qualify. They're all low income, mostly 50% area median income and less. We have, between the 2 organizations, one of which only concentrates on people with disabilities, the other can take other populations. Over the past year, we've probably housed about 200 plus people together, households. Now, it takes manpower, obviously, to do that. It takes time to do that. It's a wonderful, in my opinion, our opinion, answer to getting temporary and transitional. These vouchers go up to 2 years. So it is a really good stopgap measure for people who have lost their homes, rebuilding their homes, and people who are renters, very low-income renters in particular, that have no place to go back to because it was destroyed. Now, with the COG SEDS committee, we know that one of the top challenges within this region, which was before the hurricane, is the lack of affordable housing, affordable and accessible rental housing, to be specific, for lower income households. It was very exacerbated, obviously, by the hurricane. Now, even with subsidies, what we're finding, the subsidies cannot even fill that gap because the people with rental properties available have done, guess what? Increased their rents. And that has really presented a problem. I think one of the things that would be helpful, perhaps with this money to help mitigate, is to do some planning. We don't even know what is the level of need in each one of the communities that have been affected. And when I say the level of need, it's of rental housing that's affordable and accessible to the lower income folks. If we could have money to be able to put into that, I'm sure the COG could help tremendously, working with TAMU and others, to meet a need that we can't even articulate until after it happens. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, Tom Klassen with Halo Flight. On deck, we have Keith Barrett with the Harbor Master Navigation District.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Tom Klassen, Executive Director of Halo Flight. We're a nonprofit helicopter ambulance service and a key part of the healthcare infrastructure here, not only in Nueces County, but in the 14 counties that are represented in this program. During Harvey, we had a very detailed plan. It was evacuate and pray. Thank God that prayer worked because none of our aircraft were damaged. But we did have to travel quite a far way out of our area and out of danger. And it took us several days to come back into service. And one of our greatest risks that we had in providing that key service to our area was fuel. All of the fuel was not hardened, and we had contamination. And so that was a key part of the infrastructure that was really lacking in our area. We certainly would like to be considered in this program for updating our infrastructure as it relates to hangars for aircraft to be stored in. It takes almost 18 months to replace an aircraft if one were damaged. Our fuel systems are key to the safe operation of our service. And also, we have one all-weather helicopter out of our fleet, and we would like to upgrade all of our helicopters to have that ability to fly through the clouds and service our community right up to the point where it would be dangerous to fly during a hurricane event, and then get back into service as soon as possible to serve our community. One other point I'd like to point out with Halo Flight, that 20% of the people we fly have no insurance, have no ability to pay. The core of our mission is to transport the sick and injured in South Texas without their ability to pay. So we have no means test or anything. We go and take care of people and without their ability to pay. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, Keith Barrett with the Aransas County Navigation District. On deck, we have County Commissioner from Aransas County, Jack Cheney.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak today. As a member of the Navigation District and the Harbor Master, there's a lot of things that became evident listening to the other speakers. The issue with the low mod, the LMI issue, if you think about our coastal communities, the ones where the water meets the road, most, as you know, communities around our state, be it on a bay, be it on a lake, be it on a river or the Gulf, those are high-valued properties. And if we take away the ability for us to mitigate or harden those areas or structures, we're not going to do us any service long-term. When you think about the definition of mitigation is hardening, increasing the resilience for future disasters. If we take away the ability to harden those areas, it puts us all at risk. And those risks do not look at socioeconomic background or zip codes. That water is an indiscriminate taker of property and the taker of life. And if we do not build up those areas and make them more hardened for future storms, we are all going to be looking at ourselves and thinking about these meetings that we've attended and say, where did we miss the boat? For an example, in Rockport, we need to basically fortify a group of breakwaters and bulkheads. What lies behind those bulkheads are 2 schools, 2 churches, a fire department, police department, sheriff's department. All of those infrastructure that supports our whole community could be lost, and we could prevent that by doing some fortification, mitigation work, fortifying those breakwaters. Not unlike what happened in Corpus Christi many years ago when they built the seawall. Where would Corpus Christi be without the seawall? Where us smaller communities, we have our sets of seawalls as well. They're breakwaters and bulkheads that protect our citizenry, our property. This money is set up for that. But if we cannot apply because of the low mod issues, we're going to miss a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, County Commissioner Jack Chaney with Aransas County. We are towards the end of our stack of public input cards right now. If there are folks who would like to provide public input, please make sure to fill these things out and get them to our staff members ASAP.
Well, thank you very much. I am Jack Chaney. I'm County Commissioner of Aransas County Precinct 1 and 1A, which is probably the area that was hit the most of all of the coastal bend. We lost 30% of our canopy, probably 30% of the structures that were not windstorm, and we were tremendously hurt. We got some rising water in Precinct 1 and 1A and 2, and we were hit. Not that we are any better off or worse off than any of the rest of Aransas County or the coastal bend, but we were hurt. I just did participated in a survey that y'all just recently did for the LMI issues, and we, wasn't surprised to me that we, in all of my areas, we scored well in that area. So, but I'm coming to you. We've talked about the damages and everything. I'm coming to you more as going forward. Along with being a county commissioner, I have a BBA in human resources. I have an MBA. I got a Master's of Science in Education. That don't make me bright, okay? That just makes me educated. But one of the things that comes out of that is forward planning, okay? One of the issues that I had in my precinct, and I think we have this throughout the state, but specifically in my precinct, where the majority of the homes that were lost were not built to any kind of code standards. I had never been a fan of windstorm to the extent that they ran it, but I looked through my precinct and the houses built with old lumber stood. The houses that were built after windstorm stood. The houses in between were absolutely devastated. So that brings us to the point that the counties are moving forward, and we have the authority to go forth and to require houses to be built to higher standards, but we don't have the authority that cities do. I am a 45-year electrician. I am 70 years old, okay? And I have been an electrician all my life. I've done all this other stuff, but I've been an electrician all my life. And the majority of my homes that I have seen out there, and I didn't take in, because I'm a county commissioner, I did not go out and wire 50, 60 homes. I just helped the people that couldn't do it. It's nothing on me, it's just I was tired. And they are not to electrical standards, they're not to HVAC standards, they're not to plumbing standards. We are working on septic system standards because we have the authority to do that. The state of Texas does not give counties the authorities the city has in order to go out and do that. It's required that all new work be done by qualified people, but there's no enforcement to it. I would like to see, as part of HUD's long-range resiliency plan, that they build in something that will work around, along with the counties. Cities have the authority, counties do not. Work along with that to help us require new construction and majority repairs be done to code standards, whether it's electrical, plumbing, whatever. Concrete. We don't have any standards for concrete in the counties. Counties that are larger, like Nueces, perhaps do. But Judge Krebs over here, he has a tremendous amount of area in Sanpete County that there's just absolutely no way to regulate the quality that you're getting. And quite honestly, folks, a baby in a crib out in the county is as valuable and as important as a baby in a crib in a city. And the city's done a good job. The cities have done a really good job in bringing standards up. Majority of your fires that exist that are not from brush burning illegally are electrical. About 72% of the deaths from standards of houses burning based on population is county related across the state, across the nation. So I would like to see y'all do that. Also, I think that we probably need to look a little bit more on the low cost housing, an immediate. Our house was 70% damaged. We were able to get it back under the 50% with some issues that we did. Everything. There's 7 in my family. I have my wife, myself, my daughter, and 4 grandchildren from 3 to 11. And we have a house that's about 1,500 square foot for a small house for 7 people. And it was damaged, and so we waited and waited. We spent 108 days in a motel while we tried to get contractors who ripped us off like crazy. But we're lucky, we can live in the 700 or 800 square foot of the house that we have, and we get it back more and more. But there's a lot of people that can't. And we would have gone somewhere else and stayed while we were doing it. But, I can't afford to put 7 people up for another 108 days. I just can't do it. But thank you very much, and I appreciate what you're doing and everything, but we do need to look at not only how we can go through and fix problems that happen now, but to prevent problems in the future. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, we have Sarah Williams, the EMC for San Patricio County. On deck, Malcolm, the chairman of the Aransas County Navigation District.
Thank you for having us today. As you mentioned, my name is Sarah Williams. I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator for San Patricio County. I'm also the person in charge and tasked with overseeing and working with all of the cities within our county when it comes to recovery from Harvey and any other disaster that comes into play in our community. I want to talk to you about some of the biggest challenges that we have in these programs. We're experiencing a lot of challenges in all of the different grant programs that have come our way since Harvey. And this looks to be something that will be even greater and have similar challenges to what we've been experiencing so far. One of our biggest issues that we've experienced is that we have a lack of personnel with the experience and understanding of implementing these programs and developing these types of projects. We tend to lean heavily on the use of grant administrators and hiring of companies to help us with this. And that in and of itself creates challenges in working with those companies and being able to coordinate between multiple companies when you've got multiple grants happening at the same time. In San Patricio County, we're on the precipice of a relative population explosion. We, with the growth of industry in our county, are experiencing an influx of individuals coming into our county who are not originally from here, which creates challenges in understanding amongst the community as to what we actually need to mitigate, what are our hazards and our risks. So we have a great challenge when it comes to educating the public and educating these businesses as they come into our community. Also, much of our traditional population who was here prior to Harvey, as well as these incoming folks who are coming into our county, are utilizing non-traditional housing such as recreational vehicles. I, in my office, have our floodplain administrator. We also do development permitting for the unincorporated county. We are seeing a large influx in the development and expansion of RV parks throughout our unincorporated areas, which is going to create quite the challenge for us in the mitigation when it comes to mitigation of flooding in the unincorporated and rural areas of our county. We're having to take a long, hard look at how we are regulating this type of growth and trying to implement procedures so that we know just what we have and what we're looking at and what kind of risk we're going to have in the future with these populations that are living in these recreational vehicles. A lot of the reason why we are having so many people look to this as their source of housing is because of a lack of affordable housing, both when it comes to multifamily and single family. We had a housing shortage prior to Hurricane Harvey, and because of Harvey and this influx in population, it's getting worse. So we're getting a lot of pressure put on our housing stock. Another great challenge that we've had in San Patricio County and that we're looking to finding some pretty creative ways of how to address it is the fact that we lost our one and only hospital. We have been told that this hospital will not reopen its doors. And in order for us to truly reduce the risk of loss of life, injury, and limit the suffering in future disasters, we must tackle the challenge of reestablishing a medical system not only to benefit us in San Patricio County, but also our neighbors in Aransas County and Port Aransas who are also greatly affected by the loss of this facility. This was also a great economic impact because it was over 300 jobs that were lost when this facility closed its doors. I'm concerned about the way that we have to determine LMI because it's based off of census data, which isn't always an indicator of what the population's makeup truly is. For instance, all but one of the school districts in San Patricio County is considered to have more than 70% of its students economically disadvantaged by the USDA's free and reduced lunch program. However, those same communities, by the standards that we determine LMI with census data, aren't considered LMI. So that is a problem. It makes us expend much more energy and time to do door-to-door surveys in order to determine the low to moderate income standard for our projects, which puts a huge burden upon our staff and those that we're working with. I was also disheartened to read that we would not be able to mitigate our possible issues in regards to our emergency operations centers and government structures. These facilities and their services that they provide are integral in getting our communities on the path to recovery when something happens. So in conclusion, we're going to need a tremendous amount of support to meet the requirements of this funding source and to develop projects that will truly mitigate our future risks from disaster.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, Malcolm Dykau with Aransas County Navigation District. This is the last comment card that I have.
Well, I better
Therefore,
hurry.
for those who are interested in providing additional public input, please make sure to fill one of these out and get it to our staff members. Malcolm, go ahead.
Fine. I want to thank the GLO for not only the administration of this program, which is going to mean so much to us, but for all the past work that you've done. I am the chairman of the Aransas County Navigation District. I want to back up what Keith, our harbor master, said and bring a few other points. We have already, through FEMA PA projects, identified and funded $22 million worth of projects on our breakwater and our bulkheads and things like that. So FEMA has recognized that the special districts, particularly also the Aransas County Navigation Special District, is the first line of defense in keeping the hurricanes at bay when they come our way. That $22.5 million is very important to us, but it's not all that needs to be done. We have other projects identified, one of which, remarkably so, is in one of these low mod areas identified, where our bulkheads have been compromised and they sorely need to be rebuilt. We have other areas in the Rockport Harbor area that our bulkheads have been compromised. If these bulkheads are not repaired, there's a grave possibility that the next big old hurricane that comes around will overlap them, and if they do, then much of Aransas County, and particularly the businesses, the low mod areas, they're going to flood. And if they flood, then they'll either be severely damaged or destroyed. We need to make sure that special districts such as ours is recognized in this program and that the funding will be made available, because we have a $3 million a year budget. I don't see how we're going to come up with another $15 or so million to do these things that need to be done unless we can do it through a grant like this. Once again, thank you for all the work that's been done. We look forward to working with you. Believe me, we'll be calling you and talking to you. But thanks a lot. We appreciate your help.
Thank you for your public comment. Up next, Richard Gonzalez, representing himself. This one is now my last one. Yep. So,
Richard Gonzalez. I have lived in Nueces County, I have lived in Aransas County, and I have currently live in San Patricio County. And I came here to observe and listen. But after listening to some of the commentary, I'm compelled to make my statement. I haven't even seen what the LMI, it took me a while to figure out what that means, low moderate income. Well, this is a natural disaster, and we're now in a framework of resilience. People look at what they've lost. Some people have lost a lot more than others, okay? I'm living out of my truck. I'm a professional person. I don't think of myself as a low moderate income person, but I am right now, and I won't always be, and the hurricane created some curves for me that some of you people in this room know that I'm facing right now. But you know what? This is an opportunity to rise above as Americans and reach down to those people that are low, moderate income and ask yourselves why they are in that situation in the greatest country on planet Earth in the year 2019. All of you elected officials and people who work in this industry and government policy, this is an opportunity to reconstruct our local communities and reach down. I am serving community service hours at a food pantry because I can't afford to pay my fines. I have to deal with these people all the time. These are people coming out of the woodwork. Who are they? I haven't seen them at the local restaurants. I haven't seen them at HEB. I see them outside on their bicycles, hanging around like seagulls outside of HEB. You've all seen them in all of our communities. This is an opportunity for us to rethink what is our value and reach down into all of our communities, especially San Patricio County. Why are we still low and moderate income?
thank you for your public comment. I'm looking at the staff members in the back to see if there are any that might have been dropped on the floor, that might have ended up in your here for the GLO, the Texas General Land Office hearing on mitigation. Again, we will take further input. If you think of anything you might want to tell us at any further point in time, we have our email at cdr@recovery.texas.gov. In addition, we are going to hang around for a little bit just in case anybody wants to talk one-on-one. We thank you for being here. Remember that our content is available on the website. For our viewers that are on our webcast, all of the content is viewable at recovery.texas.gov/mitigation. Thank you all, and we will conclude this public hearing at 1:34 on Wednesday, October 2nd. Thank you all.